someone telling a homophobic joke or making fun of someone in a derogatory way, and watched her invite them to leave or stop them in mid-sentence and say, "Not in my house, you won't."
Words are things, I'm convinced. You must be careful about the words you use, or the words you allow to be used in your house. In the Old Testament, we are told in Genesis that in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was God, and the Word was with God. That's in Genesis. Words are things. You must be careful. Careful about calling people out of their names, using racial pejoratives and sexual pejoratives and all that ignorance. Don't do that. Someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get in your wallpaper. They get in your rugs, and your upholstery, and your clothes, and finally into you.
At this time, we will now start our invocation done by Alexander Barrett. He's Chief of Staff for Grace Hall RJ.
Today, I'm going to have a short invocation. So whether you close your eyes or keep them open makes no difference to me. First, I'd like to call on the spirit of ancestors, Benjamin Elijah Mays and Mary McLeod Bethune, people who inspire our people, black people, people abroad, to find within themselves something beyond the mundane. The Spirit, the one who inspired David to write the Psalms, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels, Ananda to write the Buddhist Pali scriptures, Yogananda to write the autobiography of a yogi, King to write the mountaintop speech. That same spirit of love, that same spirit of communication, in that spirit we brought to you today this writing conference. Maya Angelou suggested that words are things, and I believe her wholeheartedly that they have vibrations that are closely associated with our feelings, our humanity. I ask that the Spirit today guide all of those who are speaking today, and that they may touch the ears of those listening, so that they may be profoundly moved and pragmatically shaken, so that they too may embody this spirit of writing. Ashe, Shadu, Shalom. So be it. Hallelujah. Amen.
At this time, we will now have our welcome done by Shaquille Moore, the Grace Hall president.
I'd just like to say good evening to everyone. And it is an honor and privilege just to welcome you all to this event. First, I would like to recognize some individuals that are here today, our student leaders, and some of our faculty members that are here, and that will be mentioned later in the program. And basically, this event was organized by our hall. We initially started with two committees, and it was the Academic Affairs Committee and the Student Affairs Committee. And when I was seeking as a chairperson, I could think of no greater person than Timothy Toots. And he currently serves as the chairperson and has worked so diligently and tenaciously in planning this event. I'd like to thank you. And so could you join me in applauding them? But I'll just say, if you're not into writing, remember, do something that's worth writing. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the program.
Rami Blair is a sophomore French major from Bangor, Maine, a Bonner Scholar, member of Morehouse's debate team, and editor-in-chief of Literatus. Rami researches interwar feminist thought in French and English novels. He has presented papers at the International Conference on Caribbean Literature, the National Conference, the National Collegiate Honors Conference, and the Southern Regional Honors Conference. Rami was recently awarded the English-speaking Union's Laud Moore Scholarship to study for a semester in England. In his free time, he travels, reads, and volunteers at E.L. Connolly Elementary School. Please welcome Rami Blair.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you can hear me because I'm not going to use the microphone. Let me know if I need to be louder. But today I'm going to start off this first forum, writing the academic essay, with a few basic grammar rules and things to review. So if you've heard of some of the things that I'm talking about before, or if you haven't, just stay tuned, and for the next 10 or 15 minutes we'll go over things. Hopefully you'll learn something. I'll take questions at the end if I have time. I'll put in caveats as needed because some people believe some things about grammar, some believe other things about grammar, so we can have discussion about that. But let's get right into it. So here it is. Okay, vague pronoun reference. So vague pronoun reference is something that a lot of people do, but they don't quite recognize that they do it. So let's talk about what VPR is. It's a situation in which the noun replaced by the pronoun is unclear. So this especially happens when you're using this and that, for example. So, for example, we have Morehouse recently added a major in biochemistry. This shows the school's commitment to STEM. That's vague pronoun reference, okay? I don't know precisely what this in the second sentence is referring to. The second sentence, Morehouse recently added a major in biochemistry, showing its commitment to STEM, is correct. That sentence could also read, showing its commitment to STEM, comma, Morehouse recently added a major in biochemistry. Okay, there are also different ways you can play around to get rid of vague pronoun reference, but using a positive phrases is just one way to do that, and that's what showing its commitment to STEM is. Just another example, the executives told their employees that they would receive a raise. Okay, we don't know who they is. The executives and the employees in this sentence are both plural. They is plural. This is confusing. We don't know if the executives are getting a raise or if the employees are getting a raise. So we change the sentence around. The executives increased their employees' wages. That eliminates any vagueness that exists in the sentence. And what you're doing is you're still conveying the same thought. So a couple of simple ways to avoid vague pronoun reference. You need to replace the pronoun with a noun, which you can do. You rephrase the sentence, which is what you see in the second example, this one right here. Or you can use an appositive phrase, dependent clause, which is how we fix the first one. Vague pronoun reference is one of the most common things that you're going to see as mistakes in academic writing today. And I see it a lot when I'm working on those papers here at Morehouse. So be aware, make sure it's clear what you're referring to at the end of the day. First sentence is, it's not wrong, but it's not correct. The second sentence, there's no vagueness, and in the second sentence, well, we don't have any vagueness. So that's vague pronoun reference. If you have questions, we'll get to those at the end. But moving right along, we don't have a lot of time. Let's talk about gendered language, because gendered language is something that's a little bit controversial. Okay, so possessive adjectives always agree in person. Everyone, and these are really important because these are mistakes that are really common, not just in academic writing, but in writing emails and in any writing that you see. Okay, everyone takes a third person singular possessive and pronoun. Everyone does not have their own problems. That's grammatically incorrect 100% of the time. Everyone has his own problems, or everyone has her own problems. Okay? His and her are third person singular, so is everyone. Okay. One always takes one. There are no exceptions to this. Okay? It is incorrect to say one must do his taxes, or one must do her taxes, or one must do their taxes. One always takes one 100% of the time. So the correct way to say this is one must do one's taxes. Now, let me stop here and say that not everyone will agree with me when I say that it is incorrect for everyone to take there. Okay? Some people disagree, and there's a movement in academia today to get rid of what's perceived as gendered language. That is using his or her when we're talking about a broad group of people. Okay, so let's recognize that there is another perspective. However, my opinion on the matter is that everyone takes the third person singular. If you feel uncomfortable using his, I would recommend that you use her. But you will run into a lot of professors, specifically those who have had tenure for a while and who are more senior, who will find everyone has their own problems grammatically incorrect. So just know your audience and check with your professors ahead of time. All right. Prepositions and their placement. Okay. This is another issue that's a little bit fishy. Prepositions don't end sentences. The only time I argue that it's appropriate to end a sentence with a preposition is when you have to use what's called a phrasal verb. But we'll get to the phrasal verb in a second. So it's incorrect to say many African Americans supported the causes King believed in. That's wrong. It is a preposition. The correct is many African Americans supported the causes in which King believed. Come back to that in a second. Although, good examples of phrasal verbs. Turn it off, take it down, or give it away. Occasionally, you're going to have to end your sentence in a preposition. What I'm saying is never. I'm not saying don't ever do it, just avoid it when possible. And you can do it a couple of different ways. You can either use a relative pronoun, and I'll talk more about relative pronouns in a second, but which is a relative pronoun, or you can use more sophisticated verbiage. You can choose instead of pick out. You can delay versus hold up, and so on and so forth. So don't end sentences with prepositions. This is something that has become a little bit more common in academia, but it's still not considered good scholarly practice. All right, next slide, please. All right, the relative pronoun. So a relative pronoun is a pronoun that denotes a relative clause. These are the following relative pronouns: who and whom, whoever, whomever, whose, that, and which. All right, a couple of groups of incorrect and correct sentences. The boss agreed changes needed to be made. That's wrong. Okay? The boss agreed that changes need to be made. You're showing a relationship. Okay? This is probably the single biggest issue that I see in writing right now, is that people don't properly use relative pronouns. Part of that problem is it's gone out of use in the United States and modern American English. For those of you who take foreign languages, you have to know about the relative pronoun because it's incorrect if you don't use it. Technically, it's incorrect in English if you don't use it, but most people aren't going to catch on. Second incorrect sentence, the boy decided he wanted to go sledding. That's wrong. It should read, the boy decided that he wanted to go sledding. Okay, two examples of just other relative pronouns. The college, which opened last year, doesn't offer graduate degrees, and tell the man who dropped his wallet to go to the police station. So those are just uses of which and who. You have two uses of that, and I'll talk a little about who and whom at the end when I go through this miscellaneous grammar. Passive voice. Avoid passive voice when you can. Okay, eliminate the verb to be from academic writing. So saying Kim's argument is outlined in his essay on post-colonialism isn't incorrect, but it is in passive voice, and that's not preferable because you're not emphasizing, generally speaking, what you would like to be emphasizing. Kim outlines his argument in his essay on post-colonialism is more correct or preferred because you're really focusing on his argument. You switch to active voice, and now the focus is on his argument. Okay, so a slight difference, but a key distinction in academic writing. Also, the laboratory work is demonstrative of the concepts discussed in class, not grammatically incorrect, but not preferable to the laboratory work demonstrates the concepts discussed in class. So to avoid passive voice, switch subjects and objects. Either rephrase the sentence, or just eliminate the verb to be. Now, I'm not saying that an academic essay cannot, under any circumstances, have the verb to be. Sometimes it's unavoidable. but you shouldn't consistently be writing in is outlined, is shown, is demonstrated, because you can switch your subjects and objects and make that sentence active voice. All right, next, parallelism. Structures in a sentence have to mirror each other. It is incorrect to say, I like to ski, play guitar, and to travel. That's wrong. That's not parallel. Okay? You should say, I or Paul like to ski, play guitar, and travel. You have verbs here, they have to all be conjugated, or in this case, in the infinitive form, in the same way. It's incorrect to say to become an educator is to mold, shape, and help to develop young minds. That's not parallel. What is parallel is to become an educator, not an educator, I have a typo here, it's bad, is to become someone who molds, shapes, and helps to develop young minds. Note that when you're trying to convey a message that's especially rhetorical, parallelism is an excellent literary device to use. For example, the Winston Churchill quote, the inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessing. The inherent virtue of socialism is the equal sharing of misery. All right, so that's just one example of where you can use parallelism. Parallelism, however, is really close to a couple of other literary devices, so be careful when you start playing around with the use of rhetorical devices in essence. Get rid of your colloquialisms. Get rid of the verb to get, for example. But a colloquialism is a word or phrase used in common or everyday speech. Carry on, hang out, go for a spin, duck out, hitch a ride are all examples of colloquialisms. We use them in everyday society, but they should not be a part of our academic writing. Okay, it's highly disturbing. So the colloquialism, basically, Blair argued the importance of studying interwar novels. Using basically in that form is sort of colloquial. It's not preferable because you can replace it too. For example, in essence, Blair argues the importance of studying interwar novels. You're saying the same thing, but you're using a little bit more sophisticated language. Similarly, Harrington sums up her argument in three ways. To sum up is a little bit colloquial. You can replace it with a stronger verb. Harrington concludes with three main points. You're saying the same thing, but you're getting rid of this phrasal verb, you're getting rid of the preposition, and it sounds better and it sounds tighter. So get rid of your colloquialisms if at all possible. All right, like versus such as. This is really, really important because like is comparative. For example, we use like with similes. So it rains in my heart like it rains in the village. It's like taking candy from a baby. You know, all of those sorts of situations when we're comparing things, that's when you use like. Such as or including is used for lists and examples. So the following authors, including, I don't know, X, Y, and Z, have written books. Okay? Women like Tina Fey and Wanda Sykes are funny is wrong. Women such as Tina Fey and Wanda Sykes are funny is correct. So be very, very careful that when you're in an academic essay, that you're using like to compare, and you're using such as to set off examples or a list. If you don't like such as, or you use such as too much, use including. You're going to say the same thing and convey the same message. A good example is authors including Hardy and Dickens wrote during the Victorian era. That sentence can read authors such as Hardy and Dickens wrote during the Victorian era, but not authors like. And when you start using like, there are a couple of other issues, specifically when you talk about how the sentence can be interpreted. So just remember the difference between like and such as. You got a couple more. All right, subject-verb reading. So in a sentence, the verb must agree in person with the subject. I don't have any particularly difficult examples here, but it's just something to keep in mind, especially when you start to insert dependent clauses and appositive phrases and other things into your sentence. So Dan, Molly, and Peter want to leave is incorrect because you have three people, that's a third person plural. In this first sentence, you're conjugating the verb to want in the first person singular. The sentence should read, Dan, Molly, and Peter want to leave. Okay, incorrect. The people goes home. People is plural, so the people go home. All right, although, keep in mind, there are some exceptions to this rule. You can say data are conclusive or data is conclusive. Some people will try and tell you that one is right and one is wrong. One might be preferable than the other. For example, you're more likely to see data are conclusive in academic writing. Okay, check with your professors, check with Strunk and White, which is a very important book to have. It's about yay thick, it's silver, it's excellent to have elements of style. It's not that expensive, like $10. Get a copy on Amazon, you can use it, and it will go through all of this and much, much more. Elements of style, Strunk and White. The White is E.B. White, for those of you familiar with E.B. White's work. All right, we have just a little miscellaneous section, and then I'll take any questions that you might have. Around versus throughout, this is really important. Saying around the United States, meaning like in Memphis or Chicago, Boston, Philly, that's colloquial. Because around the United States really means in Canada or Jamaica, in Mexico or the Caribbean. Okay, if you're talking about places in the United States, you need to say throughout the United States. There's a nuanced difference there, but around the United States literally means around the United States. Throughout the United States does not mean the same thing as around. There, and there. Nobody should have a problem with this anymore. There, T-H-E-I-R, shows possession. There, T-H-E-R-E, shows place. And there, T-H-E-Y, apostrophe R-E, is a contraction of they are. Don't misuse those. It's particularly egregious now if you do. Which versus which is interrogative, an interrogative pronoun. The second which, W-I-T-C-H, is a noun. Okay? So, for example, the Salem witch trials are well documented by historians. Last but not least, who versus whom. If you're ever in a position where you're asking yourself this question, who replaces him or her, while whom replaces his or her? All right, so keep that in mind. If you can replace him, or if you can replace the subject with him or her, use who. If you are replacing with his or her, use who. Okay, so I know that was a lot in a short period of time, but are there any questions? And I didn't go through anything and everything that we could talk about with grammar, because there are other things where we could go, but keep in mind that grammar and style are two different things. That's not something you hear a lot, but grammatically, do you have any questions about anything that I went over in terms of who versus whom, the pronoun reference? Yeah.
You were talking about the his and her.
Uh-huh.
I think you had a whole sentence, and you said his, and you said or, and the whole maybe sentence was her.
Right, so, go ahead.
Or you just say everyone has his or her, and then you can
Okay, you can say in a sentence, everyone has his or her own problems, issues, but that's clunky. And in my mind, it's not preferable. I think you should pick one. Everyone has his problems or everyone has her problems. You can say everyone has his or her own problems. That's not grammatically incorrect, but from my perspective, that's halfway between saying everyone has their problems and everyone has her problems. So just pick one, as I said. If you're interested in eliminating gendered language, but your professor requires that you not use everyone has their, just say everyone has her. You can say everybody has his or her, but it's still, I would consider it wrong. And depending on your professor, he or she might consider it wrong as well. Any other, does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so when we're dealing with parallelism, essentially all of your structures, all of your conjugations have to be the same. So if I say, for example, Morehouse is a school that molds, shapes, and I don't know, is developed by donors. That sentence is not really parallel. What you need is, and you have multiple things going on in the sentence that are wrong, but parallelism is where your structures, your verbs are conjugated and your ideas are parallel. So for example, I don't know, Spelman graduated 500 women last year, was attended by, I don't know, Gabby Price, and is located in Atlanta, Georgia. Really bad example, but an example where most of your structure you have a little bit more parallel. CAU is in Atlanta, has, I don't know, a major in biochemistry, and has an African American male president. So parallelism is where all of your structures are in alignment. In a sentence, but keep in mind that sentences ideologically linked should be parallel as well. And come see me after if you want more on parallelism. Parallelism can be a little bit tricky.
Thank you, Rami.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was our student facilitator for the academic essay. And at this time, we'll give him an applause round of applause. And now, as our faculty facilitator, Dr. Leah Kirkay makes her way upstage, we would like to recognize Dr. Consuela Bennett, the English Department Chair. Would you please stand and recognize Leah? Be recognized. Leah Kirkay Harris, PhD, serves on the faculty in the English department at Morehouse College. After several years as director of the English department's multimedia writing lab, Dr. Kirkay, as she is known, assumed the position as director of the honors program. Her research and writing center on the cultural history of the African diaspora, as manifest in literature and dance. Dr. Kirkay Harris has contributions and essays in Go Tell Michelle, African American Women Write to the First Lady, critical essays on Barack Obama, reaffirming the hope, revitalizing the dream, and the Journal of African Literature and the College Language Association. Dr. Kirkay serves in a leadership capacity on the boards of several nonprofit civic and social organizations that promote the empowerment of women and children, economic development, and the cultural arts. Prior to teaching at Morehouse College, Dr. Kirkay worked in higher education and public administration. She received her bachelor's degree from Wesley College, an MBA from Clark Atlanta University, and her doctorate from Emory University. Dr. Leah Kirkay.
Hopefully my mic is working. I have on a lavalier because I like to move around. I think most of you know that. Hello, particularly Graves Hall. Hello. Dr. Turner, kudos to you. Timothy, too, kudos to you. To all my colleagues, look at Jamila Lynn, one of the great teachers I enjoy teaching with, and my department chair, Dr. Consuela Bennett, and our fabulous honors program coordinator, Ms. Ora Drayton. I think I saw, Corey Claiborne, one of my colleagues. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. The thing that excites me the most are student-initiated events. And they are the best events. Not when old buddy does come up with things, but when you come up with things and execute them so excellently. As you know, one of the student events that I first became involved in that was resident hall based, similar to this, is a night in Harlem. And it is going to be taking place February 27th, but it won't be the last. And thank you so much for inviting me. All right. Mr. Timothy Toots. Wait a minute now. Let me get to my title. He gave me this broad topic, academic rights. And you know good and well that your English 102, 101, 103 teachers tell you to avoid these broad topics. So I had to use the writing process to do just what we tell you to do. Break it down to something that is manageable. And I said, well, I don't want to teach English 101. I already do that. And you already have an English 101 teacher. I don't want to teach English 102. I already do that. And you already have an English 102 teacher.
I don't want to teach World Lit 250. I already do that. And you already have a World Lit 250 teacher. So what could I do? I could do what I rarely get to do, is to speak with you about what you should think about. And that should generate your writing. So that is how I have developed my topic. So my topic is a thesis for life. Because writing is a lifelong process. And as old and glamorous as I am, I'm still learning to write. And I'm still refining my writing. And I'm still refining my lifelong thesis. And you're just beginning on this end. And I want to help you continue next. Because writing is a journey. This is just one stop on your destination. And there are many connections that you're going to have to make throughout life. College is just one of them. There are many destinations in your career process. College is one, graduate school may be the other, job, and then you may find yourself going back to school. I did that. I've had many interruptions. I've done all kinds of different things. I've gone back to school. I've tried other disciplines. So I have already grappled with many connections and many destinations before I got here. And I had to write the whole way through. Okay, thank you. So let's talk about where you are now and just kind of frame the discussion. All right, in English 101, well, let's talk, basically in your freshman and sophomore years, you're dealing with genetic requirements. In English 101, which is English composition, your teachers are familiarizing you with patterns of development and various rhetorical situations. The same thing for 103, but it's combined with 102 research writing. And two of the main things that you learn to do in that course, 102, is argumentation and documentation. And then there's World Lit, which is, revolves around critical reading and response papers and literary analysis. So this is your academic connections with writing right now, most of you. There are a few of you who are a little more advanced, okay? Now, when you become an upperclassman, you get into your major, and then your writing becomes discipline specific. Scientific writing, if you're in physics and engineering, for example. And then everybody, no matter what your discipline, if you intend to seek an advanced degree or to get some of these wonderful scholarships and fellowships, just as Rami did with the Luard. Yay, Rami. The personal statement is essential. And I think just about everybody here will someday write a personal statement for some reason or another. So that's why I said this is your connection and your lifelong thesis, which most teachers or people will say they're research agendas, but I'm trying to avoid all of that jargon, needs to start now. Okay. So where do you connect? Well, I'm going to just show you how I connected yesterday. How many of you were here to hear this gentleman, Ratanjit Sondhe? I don't know how to ruin his name. He was excellent. And he is a chemist and an entrepreneur. And of course, he also is a well-known author. And I took 3 quotes to show how I connected with his essay, with his speech, and how you might take from him also and begin to shape your life thesis or your research agenda. He said, adding value to others is a sure way to add value to yourself. Well, he was speaking somewhat in economic terms. Economists use those terms, added value, all right? The other thing he said, your mind gets cluttered when it gets disconnected from your heart. Your teachers have told you, and if you will reread in your textbook, that the thesis statement connects to your opinion, your heart, your assertion. So I took that from him. So you see, I'm making, even though he's not an English teacher, I was making those connections. Then he said, what you see, experience, and know remains incomplete and erroneous until you unveil the timeless truth within yourself. And basically, as you continue year after year in Morehouse, whether it be the 4-year plan or beyond, 6 years or whatever, while you're here, until you unveil the truth about yourself in your own subject matter, you will have a feeling of being incomplete. Now, he also asked a big question yesterday. He said, what enlivens you? Meaning what excites you, or what brings you back to life? And I know we throw so many assignments at you, and they might be boring or uninteresting on the surface. But you must find a way that you connect, and such that that assignment enlivens you. And I kind of, for example, in 101, you might have a comparison and contrast essay. And what you may want to do is say, now, my teacher has discussed this material. It could be on 2 literary works. It could be on 2 methodologies of processing something in another class. It could be a lab report even. But basically what you need to do is say, what can I add to this that has not been added? And don't think that your teacher has been so comprehensive or that the textbook has been so comprehensive that there's not something that you can't add to it. And when I say add to it, not so much to change the knowledge or augment the knowledge, but what does it have in it for you? What in that assignment can add to you and your career? All right? Now, you get an argumentation essay in 102. You might be asked to write a paper on gun control or some such paper. And I'll go back to Ron G. He said your mind gets cluttered when it gets disconnected from your heart. Where is your heart in the discussion of gun control? Where is your heart in the discussion of terrorism? Where is your heart in the discussion on date rape? Meaning, what do you believe? And I mean powerfully believe. Okay? And that is the root of your thesis statement. That's where it comes from. We're not talking about you're getting the words out yet, but at least determining that that is what you definitively want to write about, and that's the tack that you're going to take. Then you might have a literary social analysis paper on epic heroes in World War 250. And let's go back to what he said yesterday. What you see, experience, and know remains incomplete and erroneous until you unveil the timeless truth within yourself. Well, I tell you, I had to read Homer's Odyssey in high school. I had to read it in college. Somehow or another, I escaped it in graduate school. But then when I came here to Morehouse, it was on our curriculum, and I started reading it again, and I tell you, every phase of my life, I saw something different in the Odyssey. I saw something so profound for other people as well. You know, men that I know. I even told a guy I dated, I said, you need to read this. You know, that little siren that you, never mind, but you get my drift. It's in the Odyssey. It's in the Odyssey. Okay? So I saw something, I saw truth, timeless truth. And that's what I want to write about. Okay? So how has your life journey been similar, or people you know, to that of epic heroes? Okay? Let's go on. What enlivens you in your major or discipline? What specializations are there in your field? You need to rattle off specializations in your field. You may not know them right away, but if it's biology, you know there's various ones. If you want to be in medicine, you know there's specializations in practice, neurosurgery, what's the other? What? Let me hear. Cardiology, come on. What are some specializations? Psychiatry, okay. Now, if you're in chemistry, what are some specializations? Hello? Biochemistry? Organic chemistry? Okay, you've got to figure out where you're going to fit, all right? And what specializations interest you, and what are the parameters of those specializations, and what do you need to specialize? What debates in your field enliven you? That's where your topics come from. What debate? Every field has a debate. You know, everybody's grabbing in their field for some primacy of their way of doing things. In business, economics, what are some debates in economics? Hello? What? Capitalism? What? I didn't hear you. Neo-economics. Okay, what are some debates in philosophy? What is real? Now, who has the corner on that? What are some debates in computer science? Okay, so you see where I'm getting from? You know, these are things you need to know. And you need to know who are the leading proponents of these various debates. Then the other thing you need to know, you need to name and have thoroughly read 3 favorite authors in your field. 3. You have to do it. Name 3 favorite authors in Chinese. Who's in Chinese studies? Name 3. Hello. Confucius, Lao Tzu. Okay, sociology. Name 3. Who? Baker. Fraser. Freud. That's psychiatry, I think. Du Bois, okay. So you see where I'm coming from. All right. Next. All right, let me talk about the perfect thesis. And I know you're like, what do you know about the perfect thesis? It's hard to do, let me tell you. But I'm going to tell you who mastered it. Let's go. Martin Luther King Jr., who sat here at Morehouse as a student just like you. This quote at the bottom, the function of education, therefore, is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. He wrote that here at Morehouse College as a student. So here at Morehouse, we teach critical reading, critical thinking, critical writing skills, and it can carry you all the way. So let me talk about how King developed himself as a student all the way to the pinnacle of his career. That first one that I just showed you was a paper that he wrote on education here at Morehouse College. It was a school paper and was published in the Maroon Tiger. All right, he was a sophomore. Then he wrote an editorial to the Atlanta Journal and Constitution while still a student entitled Kick Up Dust. Now, I'm not saying this is his total thesis statement, but this is the most powerful statement in that piece. We want and are entitled to the basic rights and opportunities of American citizens. The right to earn a living at work for which we are fitted by training and ability. Equal opportunities in education, health, recreation, and similar public services. The right to vote. Equality before the law. Some of the same
King's thesis development, kick up dust. We want and are entitled to the basic rights and opportunities of American citizens. The right to earn a living at work for which we are fitted by training and ability. Equal opportunities in education, health, recreation, and similar public services. The right to vote, equality before the law, some of the same courtesy and good manners that we ourselves bring to human relations.
Thank you so much. Now, as you've had a chance to see this and hear it twice, let's go back one more. I'm not going to point out, but all some of the things that Rami discussed in terms of parallelism are in this passage. And notice his judicious use of colon and semicolon. So study that at another time. But there is a paradigm of good grammar and sentence structure as well as a strong thesis. Okay, thanks. Now, we also hear his life thesis echoing in the letter from Birmingham Jail. We've all read it a million times. All right? Everybody read this out loud. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've heard him now talking about justice. All right, next. Then we're celebrating the 50th year of the Nobel Prize, 1964. He had to write a Nobel lecture, and that lecture is quite complex. But because he had finished Morehouse College and had learned all of his grammar lessons, and let me tell you something, you can go over here to the King collection, you see his note cards, you see every draft that he wrote. He thoroughly adhered to the writing process that we teach. Go back. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. He used a couple, if you look at the Nobel lecture, and I invite you to do that at some time, it follows the classic outline structure to a T, with the Roman numerals, the subtopics A, B, C, and all the evidence, the supporting sentences 1 and 2. All right? He adhered to the writing process. He outlined. There are multiple drafts. There's evidence in the King collection and everywhere you go where they show you how this was developed. Revision 7 times that we see. Revision. Rewrite. He grappled with word choice and phrasing. You can see where he crossed off and found a better word. He used outside proofreaders. He had 4 or 5 different levels of outside proofreaders. Not just people who were English professors or editors, but people who knew the movement, people who knew the audience that he was trying to reach. He had annotations, and he had typed out, and back in those days it wasn't word processing, improved and expanded vision of what he was trying to say. All right? So he developed the perfect thesis statement. He has a claim. His work is focused and precise. He maps the flow of ideas in the text, and it's manageable and interesting. And I generally ask students, I'm going too long, I'm almost there. I generally ask students to identify King's thesis statement, but this time I'm going to show it to you. The title is The Quest for Peace and Justice. This problem of spiritual and moral lag, which constitutes modern man's chief dilemma, expresses itself in 3 larger problems which grow out of man's ethical infantilism. Each of these problems, while appearing to be separate and isolated, is inextricably bound to the other. I refer to racial injustice, poverty, and war. It is a perfect essay, map, thesis statement. All right? Then you see as he matured and went to one of his last speeches, he refines this same thesis statement in Beyond Vietnam. And racism, poverty, and war becomes a little more sophisticated, and he uses the term racism, materialism, and militarism. So you see how word choice improves. And that's what will happen if you start working your thesis statement early. your wording, your sophistication, and your utility of the language will improve. All right. So you do not have to be a minister to receive a calling like King, but you can craft your life thesis while here at Morehouse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. King, for that lovely facilitation on writing the academic essay. At this time, we'll brief commission 15 minutes. Please sit in the lobby, and you can find the key spots to all ways to make it. Thank you. At this time, we will have a spoken word by Al Edwards.
If you look into a person's eyes hard enough, it's almost as if you can follow the optic nerve and see how the brain responds to the retina's images. Almost as if their thoughts and preconceived notions constructed to identify the image is as eligible as the lines on your palms. Almost as if my appearance, the person I appear to be, is who I am. Excuse me, I don't believe we met. I'm educated African American. Maybe they didn't teach me in your high school, or maybe you thought we were endangered. You do know we're not animals, right? That we have rational thought and control over instincts and urges, right? And that didn't even take education. Many of us were just brought up and raised, right? I apologize. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. The one that's chopped off it is, my ancestry doesn't make me a potential threat to your livelihood. If anything, your prejudice makes you a potential threat to mine. It's funny how the shoe fits on the other foot. The one that's chopped off it is, it's funny how the shoe fits on the other foot. The one that's chopped off it is, maybe you don't want me to be free from an ideology that you were still bound to. Stereotypes tend to be the reflection of experience or exposure, not reality. Open your eyes. I've been standing in front of you for centuries. I'm educated African American. You can loosen the grip on your purse. You can take your hand off your gun. I come in peace. Even though I was dragged into slavery, I have the potential to change the world. You can stop sleeping on me. Wake up. Open your eyes. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired of being questioned and treated differently
me for acting like a normal human being. You do know I'm not an animal, right? Excuse me. I don't think we've met. I'm educated African American. I helped shape this country, and you don't even know me.
Jamila Eslin teaches composition, research writing, and world literature at Morehouse College. Her research interests include the depiction of Black women in literature and film, the construction of Black manhood, and pop culture criticism. Her dissertation project, awarded a UNCF Mellon Faculty Doctoral Fellowship, focuses on James Baldwin's unique spatial theory and the emerging conversation on democracy in Giovanni's room, Tell me how long the train's been gone, and if Beale Street could talk. Lynn, a New York native, is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Trinity University in Washington, D.C., and an active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Currently, she is a PhD candidate in English at Georgia State University. Ms. Jamila Lynn. Kareem Heshmet is a senior business administration major with a concentration in finance from Gaithersburg, Maryland, by way of Cairo, Egypt. Coupled with a 3.7 overall GPA, some of his activities include self-publishing a novel, traveling to South Africa with Oprah Winfrey Scholars Program, and serving as a student resource for professional development. Kareem believes that a positive mindset is the key to success in any arena. Mr. Kareem Heshmet. Will you please join me in welcoming both Mr. Kareem Heshmet and Professor Lynn.
Good evening. Good evening. We sent out over this, but you guys stayed for what promises to be an awesome, insightful tag team presentation. I'm happy to be here with Kareem again. I invited Kareem to my 101 and 102 class last semester, and he did an amazing job talking about academic resumes and cover letters. So it's really great to be back to see you again. We have a couple of slides we're going to go through, but we want to entertain questions while we present. So if there's something that, you just want to kind of call our attention to, feel free to do that. Get our attention and we'll address you. Kind of have more of a conversation, right, about business etiquette, business correspondence, and when it's appropriate, depending on the scenario.
Okay, so welcome to I just want to welcome you all again to the first annual Writers Conference, and I hope to see you all here next year and further conferences. So,
I think I was confused. I think we can get right into the meat of the conversation.
okay, so I just want to go over what I want you guys to get from this program. So I want you to know, we want you to know, that the purpose of our segment is for you, the audience, to gain a better understanding of professional business communication, and also to learn about email etiquette, thank you letters, cover letters, and resumes. And I want to preface this with a quote by Albert Einstein that reads, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. So I put this out there to say that you should look to your peers for guidance or maybe as some idea for where you should be, but I don't want you to feel that, well, he had an internship at JP Morgan, so I have to be there too. That's the only place to go. So I want to put that out there, and just as a piece so that you don't feel any less qualified than anybody else.
neutral, be enjoyable, be responsive, be neutral, do not express strong views regarding politics, religion, etc. I want to add to that by saying, depending on where you are applying to, right, and depending on the type of position that you're pursuing, you absolutely need to be familiar with the culture of that environment, with the culture of that institutional organization. Meaning, philosophically, what does the brand represent? What does the brand stand behind? Because those points need to be in line, right, with the views that you express. So it's not that you want to be apolitical. You just want to simply be congruent, right? Fitting within the culture that you imagine yourself becoming a part of. Does that make sense? So you can't go to Portland and go to Nike and not be familiar with Nike's history. Where would you go to figure out that information? When was Nike founded? Who founded it? What were, some of the major points, right, during that developmental stage that those groups of people thought were important? Like, where would you find that info? Internet, okay. You might want to start with Nike.com. Definitely, right? And then kind of cross-check that with maybe some interesting articles that have been published, for example. The whole point of this is you want to cast a really wide net to kind of gather as much information as you can about that brand. For example, you can apply to Google for a position with a Yahoo address. You understand what I'm saying? We laughed. That happened to one of our Morehouse seniors 3 years ago. And even though he ended up offered the position, they took him through the ringer because of that. And for a while, he just couldn't figure out, why is it that they're grilling me so hard? They're trying to point me to something, but they just wouldn't say it explicitly. Are you sure you want to work for me? Yes, I'm so interested. I'm so impressed by the company. And he's going on and on. But at the core, he had a Yahoo address. So, again, thinking about, the choices that we make being in line with the culture of the particular brand, I think that's important. So to the point about being neutral, you want to make sure that you're not offensive in any way, but certainly philosophically on the same page with that particular company, okay?
So, yeah, just like Professor Lynn said, you want to know what the environment is of a situation or an area. She said the firm that you might work for. Well, people always ask, well, I don't really have an internship right now, or I don't have work. I'm just a student, and I'm just trying to get my grades. What about me? How does this apply to me? Well, you want to understand some things that Professor Lynn said. She said the environment, the culture, and the brand. So when you walk into, let's say, your professor's classroom, and you say, well, this is how I'm going to interact with the professor. I'm going to be very casual. I'm not going to be in an outfit that represents the brand of the school that I attend. That's how you can take something like that and apply it to yourself. The second point is, actually all of these are more so for face-to-face. So the second point I made is to be enjoyable. When you have a conversation with someone, you want to get really good at laughing at their jokes, because people like to think they're funny. And thank you. And small talk. That's a really big key is, like that water cooler, you guys go to the hallway, both get water at the same time. You guys want to interact with each other. You want to get to know the people that are going to be in your classes. You want to get to know your professors. And also, when you do get a job or an internship, you want to know the people that are above you and are working with you. So you want to get good at laughing at people's jokes and small talk. And lastly is to be responsive in a conversation. So you want to contribute with your ideas, but you don't want to, again, going to the first point, you don't want to take a stance that might offend someone. And lastly, most importantly, is you want to get to know someone before making a request. You don't want to ask someone that you just met, hey, do you have any internships I can apply for? Well, it kind of cuts the conversation, or maybe the posture of your relationship with them to only about internships. So I find it's always better, or it's always easier, or I always get more results when I build a relationship with someone And then I asked them, so I'm interested in your company. Could you tell me a little bit more about summer programs that I can apply for? So your professional emails, they need to be concise, and you need to limit your requests to only maybe one or two. Could you send my resume to Dr. Hollingsworth, and also let me know when you do so. There's two right there. My rule of thumb is you don't want your email to scroll, because people don't like scrolling. So when you open an email and it's like paragraphs, people really don't have to read that, they have to scroll through it. And another point is that the important dates that you have, make sure you bold those. Google, if you ever use Gmail, it has this thing where you can kind of just click on the date and it adds it to your calendar. That's the same concept in Outlook that people would use when you email someone at, for example, HR. They use Outlook. We use Gmail. Tigermail is like on Gmail. So when you click on that, it'll add January 22nd at 4 p.m. to my calendar. So if you make it easy on me, I'll be more willing to help you with your request.
To this point, make sure that when sending email, you use an account that is appropriate for the nature, right, of the business that we are conducting. For example, like Tigermail, I encourage you to use Tigermail first and foremost. Tigermail with that Morehouse attachment there just kind of solidifies your position as a student. It gives you some institutional affiliation, so I encourage that. If you choose not to use that, maybe a Gmail, Yahoo, any of the other, supporters are okay. But make sure that your username, right, is appropriate. Stick with something that is not too complicated. Mr. Sexy, 2014. You laugh, but my colleagues can attest to the fact that you will share that email with us. You would even do so much as to email us from that account and wonder why you haven't received a reply. Your name, something that is too complicated. A young man had periods, numbers, lowercase, underscore. I mean, it was just so busy, and it was a distraction. So before I could even get to the content of the message, I was thrown off by that. So keep in mind that, we want to keep the less is more principle at work here. Yes, I think that's fine. Any other questions about the email?
I try to keep the numbers to something like referencing me, like my graduation year, like birth year, 93, 92, 01, something like that. It's kind of reference. Any other questions?
I have another question, but it's preferable to just stick to your first and last name or
Yeah,
last.
some variation of like first initial, last name, something like that. It's a number maybe. So
Just because a lot of people have, think a lot of specialized for the workshop right now.
yeah,
You said, some people's handwriting is illegible. So
right.
you'll write a number, they can't sign it, but you are writing out your name, they can start writing.
Right.
That's what your name is.
Exactly. And they'll even see who this email is coming from.
As opposed to like civilians, Okay, cool. Moving on. Your greeting. Dear Dr. Bennett. Hello, Professor Lynn. Hey, unacceptable. Unacceptable. To whom it may concern, if you want to be super formal, okay, you can never be penalized for being extra conservative and extra formal. You know what I mean? That rarely works against you.
When in doubt, go conservative. When in doubt, go conservative.
Yeah, good point, good point. And how formal is the relationship? That kind of takes us to the question here. Again, you have to really discern what kind of business are we engaged in. If I'm making a request, then certainly I want to be extra polite. And it's not, could you send my resume? Would you be willing? But as a recommendation, you want to be as gracious and humble, keyword humble, as possible. So even the very email communication can me an example, because it really is a case-by-case kind of thing.
So, last semester, I went to a treatment for David Morgan, in contact.
From all of the other responsibilities and, skills that you really want to emphasize in this resume. So make it brief, and then again, it could be a talking point.
Like, I don't like, I work on 5 job.
When you look at the individual thing, but you do want to make sure that you represent as much of you as you can, right, in terms of your involvement and your interest. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Community service. Only include community service if you have significant involvement. If you worked at the soup kitchen last Thanksgiving and that was the only time you went for 3 hours and don't list it, it's not impressive. Okay? Now, if you go to the soup kitchen once a month with a group on campus and there's some continued, right, service, some sustained service over a period of time, absolutely list it. Some people are super proud of their, I know I have over 300 hours with this group or that group, super impressive. But kind of a one-time pop-up because you had to, not so much. You see, that gives another message, and that's kind of what you want to stay away from. Be careful how you include community service. Make sure it's substantive and meaningful.
This next section is how you should have heading, maybe not in this exact format, but you see, I don't mind is your name, and then right below that, you have a mailing address, an email address that you use or that you check frequently. Preferably, you should have it synced to your phone if you have that capability. If not, check your email every night. And a phone number that you can be reached at reliably. So if you're not, for whatever reason, in school that you got financially, you can't get a phone bill, cool, just put an email. No one's going to think twice about it. But if you have something up there, make sure that when someone reaches out to you, you'll reach back in time.
And you notice he uses Morehouse address because using your home address in Wisconsin, for example, it can take your, mom a while to open the mail, get the mail to you, and you might miss your window of opportunity. So using your campus address gives you, more readily, available access. Yes.
What's your name on like I see how put like all the address on one side.
Yeah, it just depends on your design. If you can make it work without it looking kind of, busy and too much, then that's cool. Because maybe with the font, you can fit it in so it looks neat and it's not a distraction. But at least you want to have the campus address, I think.
This is actually someone's resume during our editing stage. So this is how you should also look at a resume. And something I just want to let you know is you don't go to just one of these events or one of these programs and suddenly you're an expert. This takes time, and resume is a living document. So it's going to be changing a lot. If you take it upon yourself to learn how to edit your resume, it's going to be a much easier process for you as you go on editing, and you're going to find you have better results. So this is how I want you to look at a resume. We'll go through his experience. So you see at the top right, he has the location of where this takes place. So I kind of have some frame of reference to where he's from or the places he goes either during the summertime or throughout the year, which he spent 2 years there, from just about 2 years, from June 2011 to August 2013. So you always want to have the location of the place, the time frame that you were there, also the name of the place is important. That would help. And the position that you had located close to that. In this case, I have bold the location and italicized the role. So any variation of that is fine.
Yes.
they're not out to get you, but they could do something like that and say, oh, well, this guy doesn't pay attention to detail. He's going to mess up my reports. I don't want him. Next. And this is how he got it back. So I see where he worked for both 2 locations, managed a team of 2+ employees, 200 customers. So now it has a frame understanding of how many people he served. Prioritized all of her shifts. He always starts something with an action verb. And because this job has ended, you notice it's in past tense. If it's something that's present, make sure it's active. Remember, Mr. Rami was speaking about active and passive. And prepared 100+ food items, and now over there, all to the right, it says increased revenue by 5%. That's
How
also
did you impact, right? How did you impact that environment? What kind of difference did you make? Well, I increased revenue, during my time of service, I increased revenue. Our customer service ratings went up on Yelp, whatever it is, right? This is a tangible, tangible result that I can point someone to as a result of me being involved, right, in this particular job.
You go back just one more time. I just want you guys to look at this again. So everything is short. Go to the next slide. Things are longer, maybe taking a line or two, but with quality.
Still brief, right?
Yeah, still great.
Cover letters. Dr. Prepay talked about personal statements, cover letters. Much of what you would really talk about in a personal statement might actually make its way to a cover letter. It's a letter of introduction. Who are you? What is your field? What is your interest? Where do you go to school? Why? What position are you interested in? Why does it make sense to hire you? We would consider you for the job. This is your brag sheet. You're putting forth your best. So it should be clean, right? You don't want any grammatical errors. You don't want spacing issues. Format needs to be 100% tight. And in terms of the way that this should be structured, paragraph form, right, makes sense, but nothing beyond the page.
Again, one page, no trend. One page, same font, Times New Roman, 11-point font.
You wouldn't want to start by saying, hello, my name is. Maybe you want to start with the position that you're pursuing. I know what your name is because you're going to sign it that way, so maybe you want to just get right into the position and talk about the skills, right, that qualify you for this particular job or opportunity. And we can talk about that a bit more if you contact me as well. Here is an example of what that header should look like. You have applicants' contact information, who the letter is being sent to. For example, here, consumer
things that it's going to say, to mirror that in your resume or cover letter under demonstration. Read articles on a weekly basis, or your cover letter say, read articles on this topic. Many of your class projects are group oriented, so you can use that to your advantage. You're not just here gathering dust. You can use these projects or these assignments on your LinkedIn. None of them I on, I well. If you don't tell me, I don't check in the mirror at some point in the day, you never even know. So Morehouse is a safe and closed environment where you can ask for advice from people around you without having to feel like, oh well, he's not going to get the best impression. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people here in Spelman, a lot of people are willing to support you, and we're all going to be successful, even though in here maybe tension, but when we go out there, we all wear that Morehouse, and we all want that brand to be upheld.
Well, guess what? Sometimes you do your best to prepare the best document, right? The best reflection of who you are. You so believe that this job is yours, so much so that you start telling people, you know where I'm going to be this summer. You know, you start speaking it into existence, right? As people say, you got to claim it, put it in the universe. Well, guess what? Then you get the letters. While we were impressed with your credentials, unfortunately, we cannot offer you a position this summer. Translation, no internship, no job. To this point about asking for advice, I think a mature student gets out of his feelings in terms of the discipline, right?
Quit.
And you quickly respond, thank you for your acknowledgement, right? I would most appreciate general feedback from our conversation. How may I prepare in the future? Do you have any suggestions for me in this particular field? What do I need to work on? Try to get detailed info, because then you can pinpoint areas, right, for improvement. Does that make sense? Instead of taking that letter and shredding it to pieces, which I know you want to do, maybe we'll do properly, try to use that as a teachable moment.
Most people don't follow up, and sometimes they'll send you the wrong letter. I've heard from my friend like, oh yeah, he's in, for example, he's in the ROTC program. I'm sorry, but he found out I'm not getting my ribbon. Why? So he went to his instructor, and she was like, oh, I forgot to add you to the list. Here's your ribbon. Here's your internship. Here, have some money.
Make mistakes, so without the follow-up, you will never know. You know what I'm saying? So it shows, I think, initiative, it shows maturity, and it shows seriousness about your commitment to this particular field. Yes, sir.
And I'm sitting this slightly together. Who knows, there's a chance that maybe your follow-up professor will not, they might say, mistakes that really shouldn't be doing.
It shows tenacity, it shows, execution, it shows care and concern for performance. It says a lot. So to your point, absolutely, I think that's a good one.
All about process improvement. Recruiters are hiring you for intellectual capital, your personality, and your character. They're hiring brains. They're hiring you to think and to contribute value to their organization, to their classroom, to whatever program they're doing. They need you to work at a company. They need you. Demonstrate that through your strengths. If your GPA is not your strongest point, find other ways to supplement that. If you have like a low GPA, but you were the president of a service organization, I'm going to understand where your time went. I'm going to be able to see that he's capable of leading a movement, leading an initiative.
And maybe you won't even acknowledge. I don't need you to tell me that my GPA isn't stellar, right? Maybe just even be forthright in that acknowledgement. You don't want to overemphasize the GPA, being a 2.9. But acknowledging it says that, okay, there's some honesty here. It is what it is. However, this, and this have going on, and I'm recommitted to know that they're asking for 3.0 and you're 2.9, you need to try your hand. I feel like you have to try your hand. Now, if you're far off, 2.5 and they want a 3.0, that might not be the opportunity. So, but if you don't mind putting the time in, again, you never know how situations can be flipped. Yes, some of them are 3.5, 3.8, so it really depends on when you kind of have your eye on.
So,
I think we have a couple questions. I know we're over time by about 11 minutes on my watch, but maybe we could take 2 questions and share our personal information again. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Dr. Carmine, I'm freshman at State Senator. My question was that as a freshman, we're beginning a new branch in life, and when we're talking about our resumes, at what point do we begin to cut off our high school achievements and whatnot and begin to transition into college? Because I know right now I don't have a very extensive essay college, but hopefully
I encourage my freshmen to use the 3-year rule. And every year that you're here at Morehouse, we have one less year represented from high school. So by the time you're really a rising junior, you should be like senior year high school or predominantly Morehouse College involved. I think we were proud of you in 6th grade when you won the spelling bee. We still have that little ribbon on that mantle. And every time we have a family occasion, we talk about that word that you spelled in 6th grade. Again, that's no longer relevant. You see, so I like the 3-year. Does that make sense? I like 3 years.
Unless it's something like amazing. Someone I know sang at like Carnegie Hall. I don't even know what year it was on her resume, but like, just keep it on there. It's something like
And
that.
Chair, if you could make your way to the stage, please. And also, SJ President Anthony Zimmerman, right now.
I also would like to thank the remaining student leaders to my right, the president of the SGA, here the English department, and all of the
They wait to plead their case.